The United States ambassador to NATO is pushing back against mounting criticism from parts of Europe over Washington's renewed focus on Greenland, emphasizing that Arctic security remains a Central American defense priority and cautioning allies against escalating tensions. In an exclusive interview with Fox News Digital, Ambassador Matthew Whitaker addressed concerns that followed France's announcement of new military exercises with Denmark, developments that have drawn attention to the strategic role of Greenland and the broader Arctic region. Whitaker made clear that from the American perspective, the issue is rooted in long-standing security considerations rather than sudden political pressure, and he suggested that some European responses have gone too far. Speaking on the growing backlash in Europe, Whitaker acknowledged the concerns, but rejected the idea that the United States is driving unnecessary conflict. He stated that discussions surrounding Greenland should not be framed as a confrontation between Washington and European capitals. Instead, he underscored that the matter fundamentally involves three parties. According to Whitaker, the situation is ultimately an issue between the United States, Denmark, and Greenland, and it should be handled within that framework, rather than through broader political escalation across Europe. Whitaker explained that Greenland's strategic value has been evident for years, particularly as climate changes continue to reshape the Arctic environment. He pointed to the gradual melting of ice as a development that is altering the region, opening new routes, and creating new security challenges. From his perspective, these changes make Arctic security one of the most significant defense concerns facing the United States today. He stressed that the High North has long been a focus of his discussions, well before the current controversy, and that the evolving Arctic landscape only reinforces its importance. In describing Greenland's role, Whitaker emphasized its geographic position and how it fits into broader American defense planning. He stated that the security of the Arctic directly affects the security of Greenland, which he described as the northern flank of the continental United States. As Arctic routes become more accessible, Whitaker argued that maintaining stability and awareness in the region becomes increasingly critical. He linked these developments directly to U.S. national security, framing Greenland not as a distant territory, but as a key element in protecting the Western Hemisphere. Expanding on that point, Whitaker explained that Greenland's location provides access to vital naval pathways and monitoring capabilities. He said that viewing Greenland through the lens of naval access and surveillance highlights why fortification and awareness in that part of the hemisphere are so important. According to Whitaker, ensuring the ability to monitor and secure this region is essential for the long-term security interests of the United States. His remarks reinforced the idea that American attention to Greenland is rooted in strategic defense planning rather than short-term political considerations. Despite the heightened rhetoric in some quarters, Whitaker said recent diplomatic engagements demonstrate that the issue can be managed constructively. He referenced what he described as a very successful meeting involving Danish and Greenlandic officials, as well as U.S. Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Rubio. Whitaker expressed confidence that these discussions point toward a constructive path forward, suggesting that dialogue remains effective and that there is no need for heightened tension among allies. At the same time, Whitaker warned that reactions from Europe risk complicating matters unnecessarily. He reiterated his view that European allies sometimes respond too strongly when sensitive issues are raised. In this case, he said, cooler heads need to prevail. His comments reflected a call for restraint, urging allies to avoid inflaming the situation and instead focus on practical cooperation and dialogue. Whitaker's remarks came as attention remains fixed on broader security concerns in the Arctic, including activities by Russia and China. While addressing Greenland specifically, he placed the issue within the wider context of global security competition, underscoring why the United States continues to prioritize strength and preparedness. Speaking from the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, Whitaker drew on historical references to explain Washington's approach, invoking President Ronald Reagan's doctrine of peace through strength as a guiding principle. According to Whitaker, the United States has demonstrated its strength and its ability to project power, something he said no one disputes. He cited recent American actions as evidence of that capability, noting that the U.S. has shown it can act decisively when necessary. However, he stressed that American strength alone is not enough to ensure collective security. Whitaker said the United States wants its NATO allies to be equally strong, and he acknowledged that many of them have not yet reached that level. While recognizing that some NATO members have made progress, Whitaker cautioned against treating all allies the same. He explained that there are significant differences among NATO countries when it comes to defense capabilities. Some allies, he said, have clearly become more capable, while others continue to lag behind. For that reason, he argued, it is not accurate to paint all NATO members with a broad brush. Whitaker also addressed economic challenges facing Europe and the European Union, linking them directly to defense spending and military readiness. He said European governments will need to remove constraints that limit their economic growth if they are to meet their defense commitments. According to Whitaker, deregulation, increased access to capital, and stronger economic growth are essential steps. He argued that economic strength is what ultimately allows countries to fulfill promises to increase defense spending and enhance their military capabilities. He noted that this message is one he delivers consistently in discussions with European Union officials. Whitaker said he regularly emphasizes the importance of revitalizing economic growth and pointed out that there are proven methods for achieving it. His comments suggested that defense readiness cannot be separated from broader economic policy, and that long-term security depends on sustainable growth. As he outlined his priorities, Whitaker identified one issue as paramount. He said his top focus is ensuring that NATO allies follow through on the major defense commitments agreed to last year in The Hague. According to Whitaker, political promises alone are not sufficient. He stressed the importance of turning those commitments into real military capabilities within the NATO alliance. Whitaker explained that his goal is to see concrete progress, not just declarations. He said that ensuring the commitments made in The Hague translate into actual capabilities is his number one concern at the moment. This emphasis, he noted, reflects a broader push to make NATO forces stronger and more prepared. He also discussed how geography influences how seriously different countries perceive security threats. Whitaker pointed to nations closer to Russia, particularly in the Baltic and Nordic regions, as being especially aware of the risks. He cited Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, along with Nordic countries, saying their proximity has shaped their understanding of the threats posed by Russia, including events such as the 2014 annexation of Crimea and the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Whitaker highlighted Poland as a notable example among NATO members. He described Poland as clear-eyed in its assessment of security challenges and noted its plans to spend more than 5% on core defense in the coming year or two. This level of commitment, he suggested, sets Poland apart within the alliance. However, Whitaker said other allies remain behind. He explained that he keeps a regularly updated dashboard tracking progress on defense commitments, though he cautioned that it is still too soon to draw firm conclusions. He stressed that the focus must remain on building real capabilities that make NATO forces stronger and ready for immediate action. Whitaker also referenced the scale of American defense investment, noting that President Trump announced a $1.5 trillion defense budget. He said the United States has demonstrated capabilities that no other country can currently match, reinforcing Washington's leadership role within NATO. Reflecting again on the setting of his remarks, Whitaker said, being at the Reagan Library served as a reminder of how Ronald Reagan implemented policies that spurred economic growth. He added that President Trump has followed a similar approach, aimed at unleashing American entrepreneurship and innovation by reducing regulatory barriers so companies can grow and prosper. As the discussion moves deeper into the operational and political realities facing NATO, Ambassador Matthew Whitaker provided further detail on how the alliance is responding to shifting security demands and uneven levels of preparedness among its members. Building on his emphasis that political promises must translate into real-world capabilities, Whitaker described the mechanisms he uses to track whether those commitments are being honored. He explained that he maintains a regularly updated one-page dashboard that gives him a clear snapshot of where NATO allies stand in terms of defense readiness and capability development. According to Whitaker, this tool allows him to assess progress in a practical way, rather than relying solely on public statements or formal pledges. Whitaker cautioned that while some indicators are moving in the right direction, it remains too early to make definitive judgments about overall success. He stressed that defense spending alone is not the ultimate measure of preparedness. Instead, he said, the focus must remain squarely on capabilities. In his view, investments must result in forces that are stronger, more integrated, and ready to respond immediately if required. He emphasized that readiness is not an abstract concept, but a concrete standard that demands tangible improvements in military strength. Returning to the broader theme of deterrence, Whitaker underscored that the United States has already demonstrated a level of military capability unmatched by any other nation. He referenced recent actions undertaken by the United States as evidence that it can project power effectively when necessary. While he did not expand beyond those examples, his remarks reinforced a consistent message. American strength is well established, and the expectation is that NATO allies work toward comparable levels of credibility within their own means. Whitaker linked this expectation directly to the concept of collective defense. He made clear that NATO's effectiveness depends not only on U.S. leadership, but also on the willingness and ability of all members to contribute meaningfully. He said that while the United States remains strong, the alliance as a whole is only as capable as its weakest links. This, he indicated, is why Washington continues to press allies to increase both spending and speed when it comes to building defense capacity. The ambassador returned to the economic dimension of the issue, expanding on his earlier remarks about Europe and the European Union. He said that defense challenges cannot be separated from economic policy choices. According to Whitaker, restrictive regulations and limited growth make it harder for governments to meet their defense obligations. He reiterated that European countries will need to remove barriers to economic expansion if they want to sustain higher levels of military investment over time. Whitaker explained that this message is a recurring theme in his conversations with European officials. He said he consistently urges leaders to focus on proven methods of economic growth, emphasizing that stronger economies provide the foundation for stronger defense forces. In his account, economic vitality is not a secondary issue, but a prerequisite for meeting the commitments made within NATO frameworks. As he continued, Whitaker once again highlighted the importance of follow-through on the decisions reached at last year's NATO summit in The Hague. He described those agreements as significant political milestones, but stressed that their real value lies in implementation. According to Whitaker, turning those commitments into operational military capabilities is essential for maintaining credibility within the alliance and for ensuring effective deterrence. Whitaker said this responsibility weighs heavily on his role as ambassador. He emphasized that his primary objective is to ensure that what was agreed upon politically becomes reality on the ground. He framed this task as urgent, noting that security environments do not wait for slow or incomplete implementation. His remarks reflected a sense of focus on accountability rather than rhetoric. The conversation then turned again to how geography shapes threat perception among NATO members. Whitaker reiterated that countries located closer to Russia tend to view security risks with greater urgency. He pointed specifically to the Baltic states of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, as well as the Nordic countries, describing them as acutely aware of the dangers posed by Russia. He referenced Russia's actions in recent history, including the annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, as events that have deeply influenced these nations' security outlooks. According to Whitaker, these countries' proximity to Russia has led them to prioritize defense spending and readiness in ways that are more immediate and comprehensive. He suggested that lived experience and geographic exposure contribute to a clearer understanding of potential threats. This, in turn, affects how seriously these nations approach NATO commitments and military preparedness. Whitaker contrasted this with other allies that, in his view, have been slower to respond. While he did not name all of them, he made clear that not every NATO member shares the same sense of urgency. He emphasized that this disparity remains a challenge for the alliance, particularly when collective defense depends on unified readiness. Within this context, Whitaker again singled out Poland as an example of decisive action. He described Poland as clear-eyed in its assessment of security risks and highlighted its plans to spend more than 5% on core defense in the near future. According to Whitaker, this level of investment demonstrates a strong commitment to defense and sets Poland apart from many of its peers. He suggested that Poland's approach reflects a realistic understanding of the current security environment. While he did not elaborate further, his comments positioned Poland as a benchmark against which other allies' efforts might be measured. The implication was that higher spending, when directed toward concrete capabilities, can significantly enhance readiness. Despite these examples, Whitaker reiterated that progress across NATO remains uneven. He returned to his dashboard, noting again that it is updated regularly to reflect changes in defense capabilities. However, he cautioned that data alone does not tell the full story. He emphasized that what ultimately matters is whether these investments translate into forces that are capable of immediate action. Whitaker stated that readiness must be measured by the ability to respond without delay. He said that NATO forces must be strong enough and prepared enough to act on short notice if required. This standard, he suggested, should guide all defense planning and spending decisions within the alliance. The ambassador also addressed the scale of American defense investment in this context. He noted that President Trump announced a defense budget totaling $1.5 trillion. According to Whitaker, this level of funding underscores the United States' commitment to maintaining unmatched military capabilities. He said these capabilities have already been demonstrated and remain a key pillar of NATO's overall strength. Whitaker's remarks returned once more to the symbolic setting of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. He reflected on how Reagan implemented policies that promoted economic growth and supported long-term security objectives. He said that these policies helped create an environment in which American strength could be sustained. He then connected this historical reference to the present, stating that President Trump has followed a similar approach. According to Whitaker, this approach focuses on unleashing American entrepreneurship and innovation while reducing regulatory burdens. He said this strategy is intended to allow American companies to grow and prosper, thereby supporting both economic and defense goals. As the interview progressed, Whitaker made clear that the United States does not intend to ease pressure on its allies. He said Washington will continue to ask European and Canadian partners to do more in terms of defense spending and capability development. At the same time, he acknowledged that there has been progress, summarizing the situation with a measured assessment that, so far, efforts are moving in the right direction.